Welcome to Corporate Cafecito,
a Latin and business podcast where we share insights and strategies to help entrepreneurs and professionals thrive.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Corporate Cafecito. Yo soy Nayeli Suarez Gas.
Y yo soy Carlos Butler, vale.
Carlos, one of the things, Carlos and I talk all the time.
Yeah.
And one of the things we were talking about that we felt, if you didn't know or if you haven't heard, is the fractional. The fractional, it means, right, when I was teaching my kids fractions, I had the Lego pieces and I was like, this person, this one versus this two versus the eight.
Yeah.
And a fractional CEO or CHRO or CSO or COO, CFOs, all of this is giving, it's giving people an opportunity to work, good salaried jobs, but maybe they only need that person once a week, once a month, twice a month.
Yeah, it's a very interesting concept. I think it's getting a lot of steam, a lot of traction. It almost feels like a little bit like gig work for professional services.
It's like the Uber of the C-suite.
Yeah. And so, basically, I know you started sort of going into it, but the idea is
I just slurped.
an individual, the idea is that an individual isn't tied to just one organization, maybe necessarily, or maybe they are, but they're only doing it for a fraction of their time, meaning they're not there on a full-time basis, or maybe they're there for a relatively smaller contract, so they know that it's like a 6-month stint, and then they sort of go off into the next one. Yeah. And so, we thought that it would be just a great opportunity because it is becoming so much more prevalent.
Common. Yeah. And there's companies set up to house these fractional C-suites too. So you could join one and sign up and say here's my skill set, here's my resume. Yes. If you get a job, I should be part of the consideration set. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think it's important for us to maybe take a step back and talk about how this work sort of started. And I would say probably the necessity, what started out initially as a necessity, but now has become probably maybe even what I would call a competitive advantage, or certainly an opportunity for people to explore maybe different companies, different industries. And so maybe we start there
pros,
a little bit.
Yeah, and also pros and cons, what works, what doesn't work, when you should consider this.
Yeah.
My soft spot, because it's the part of the world I'm part of, but 40-plus-year-old women tend to be exited from corporate at a higher rate.
Yeah.
And that is usually when they go into consulting. And so this fractional work has really benefited us. If you can't, if you don't want, I'm going to say you have the choice. You can go back and get a full-time job, or you can explore.
Yeah.
And you could go in and problem solve, or, partner up with a company and provide solutions based on your experience.
Yeah.
And then you're out.
Yeah. And I will say, I remember the very first time that I heard of the term fractional. It was probably about maybe 15 years ago, but it was not a common, not a common term ever used at all. And it was specifically for financial services.
Yeah, a CFO. I felt like the CFO was the only one.
Yeah.
And I didn't hear it 15 years ago, but the first time I heard it was for CFO.
Yeah. And so particularly they were doing B2B CFO services. And so what they were doing is essentially it was one CFO who was dedicating their time as acting CFO for different, organizations, and realized that it was actually much more lucrative than, and I'll say, I think what I've come to understand is that there could be good money. There are obviously some trade-offs, which we'll talk about, I think, in a little bit, but it was so this particular individual was someone who didn't want to be tied down to one specific company. They had been laid off in the past. They had, you name it, just from an experience perspective, they had experienced all of it.
You know how you said it is like the gig economy? It's it feels like the temp agency.
It can feel a little temp agency.
Yeah, we're we're going to send you in for a little bit, see how you do.
Yeah. And so it started off as, hey, I'll go and do this. And then that way I will have job security pretty much no matter what, no matter where. And if I don't like a company, that's fine because I don't have to be there forever.
Mhm.
And if I do like a company, maybe there is an opportunity eventually for me to
Yeah.
become a full-time CFO or not, right? But they liked the flexibility of being able to do that. I think
I
fast
think it was a
forward,
perk at the beginning to be
yes.
able to do this fractional work.
Yeah,
And
it
now it
certainly.
feels like it might also hurt to be like you may be forced into this because you can't find a full-time job.
So you bring that's a great segue, right?
Yeah.
So what I think the part of the reason why I think there's been what I've noticed has been kind of a trend up in
Hmm.
terms of fractional work over the last 2 years, is certainly to a point where it's become, I think, common language,
Yeah.
is the fact that a lot of folks had been sort of going through a lot of companies roughly around a year and a half ago to 2 years ago. I think we know, particularly in the US, sort of what may have transpired. Were getting laid off, or
Yep.
maybe there's a lot of job insecurity. And so they realized that it would be a good opportunity, particularly if they were no longer working, to not necessarily take the consulting route. Because I think that's the other kind of like it's either full time consulting or maybe even fractional. And there may be other
Hmm.
things
In
out
between,
there.
yeah.
But I think certainly, and you can, feel free to give a different perspective. But like those are the big, I think, three buckets that I'm
Yeah,
sort of
especially
seeing.
when people leave the workforce, or are exited or laid off,
Yeah.
right? The first thing that happens is like, who do I reach out into my network?
Yeah.
Who can hire me? Who can give me, like, we used to call it freelance,
Yeah.
right? You go
Yeah,
and
exactly. Yeah,
freelance.
that's
And you were a freelance, sales or marketing executive, or
yeah.
you came in and you were placed, or you went in and you just did some work, or you did a project, and then you left.
You left,
And
yeah.
now I actually like the idea of a fractional because it also, I think it's an appropriate name because you're not expected to be like the head of all these decisions.
Correct. Yeah.
But it's someone that you could bring in an expertise. Now, I will tell you, as an entrepreneur, I would love to have a CFO like 3, 4 days a year
Yeah.
where I could just be like, I would hate the prep work that it would take to be ready for this person
Yeah,
to
that's
come
a good
in.
point. Yeah.
But I would love for them to come and like see my books and be like, boom, 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 boom,
Yeah.
boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Like to get that expertise that I can't afford to have, like, not the caliber of CFO that I
Sure.
want for the price that I can pay.
Well, and you bring up a good point. So like the fractionals typically tend to do more than the 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
They're probably on
I
for
was
like maybe
joking,
3 months, but
yeah.
no, but I think it's a good observed difference, because the reality is that there are still people out there that are providing accounting services and finance services and HR services, but on a more kind of like, hey, am I doing this right? Or hey, I need my taxes completed. So
Right.
this is more of like literally
This is more
someone
of like
acting as that
strategy
executive.
and like helping and
Exactly.
like margin
Yeah.
analysis and all
Right.
those things that,
Right.
yeah.
And so when people would leave an organization,
Mhm.
what companies are starting to realize is, hey, we may not be ready to find a full-time replacement yet, but we definitely still need this.
And
And so can we have somebody in that has that expertise, that background, that experience, and can maybe help us for a few months to tie us over?
yeah.
Uh,
This is such a Latina point of view, and I am a woman scorned, but I've seen people where they like leave the position and then they come back as the contractor for that position.
oh, yes.
And I would be like, I don't know if I could do that if I got exited to then be the consultant
Yeah.
for it. I mean, probably it's
Yeah.
good money, but
There's
I would be so mad.
Yeah,
Um,
I can definitely see that, and I don't think that's just a Latina point of view. By the way, I think like I would probably, yeah. Right now,
Like-
just thinking
like,
about
would
it
you
is
come
making
back
me-
and be our CEO while we look for the new CEO? It's like, no.
Yeah, no, but you're right. There typically is a lot of good money involved in that. But what I've noticed people doing, Nayeli, recently is saying, "Hey, okay, so I'm either purposely choosing to leave corporate because I feel like maybe there's job insecurity, or I want to move. I physically. We know somebody who's here actually.
Oh, yeah.
Mariana, who had literally decided that she was gonna move to a completely different country, and
Yes.
that opened up just different doors. And so being able to do that on a fractional basis gave her the opportunity to do that.
Yeah,
What
we've
it
had
also,
several because I
Yeah.
think, what was it? David did too.
yeah,
And it's just like, if you want the flexibility. Now, I will tell you, generationally, I feel like that's a like millennial Gen Z,
Yeah.
right? Like I don't know if Gen Xers, if we're ready to be like, I want to move, so I'm gonna go like fractional. I think that we're still a little, like I always say when millennials were like, they pushed to work from home and God bless, because that was a phenomenal move. It helped all of us. I'm like, why were we never bold enough to do that?
Yeah. It's funny that you say that though, because the majority of the people that I know that are at the point in their careers where they're senior enough to say do fractional work, and now I'm talking at an executive level,
Yeah.
by the way, you can do fractional work at any,
Yeah.
at any level, but like the CFOs, the CHROs, all that other stuff, those are predominantly Xers.
Yeah.
Um, and they've sort of, I think, been pioneering a little bit about like, how is this work done? And what I've noticed is that folks are saying, well, I don't want to be tied down to one specific company, and I also want to be able to go from industry to industry, because ultimately maybe I do want to start my own consulting business eventually.
Well, I think the other
Or
thing is we know so much. Like we're
yes.
at that point where we're the experts.
Yes.
Not in everything, but in the things that we know, we are really good at it because
Yeah.
we're that 25 to 35 years in working, so like we know,
Yes.
we have the network, we've seen it done before many 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 times,
Yeah.
some successfully, some unsuccessfully, so we bring that perspective. Like a fractional should come in with the basis and the foundation of many industries or many businesses,
I agree.
and also be able to quickly make an impact. Like this is not a slow build. You go in because you're the expert at XYZ.
I agree. I think a lot of what I've seen, which actually makes me really happy about this, is the fact that people are jumping to different industries. They are jumping to different size companies, which again is a blessing and amazing for you to be able to work anywhere between a startup all the way to an organization that has 20, 30,000 people, right? Unfortunately, lately, a lot of what I've seen is most of it has been triggered by layoffs.
Yeah. And that's
And
a
I
like
think there's a real fear for people to be able to say, and we've talked about this in a previous episode, but like the job market out there is
it's
really
horrible.
tough. And so rather than sort of trying to make their way through a million candidates and AI
I'm
and
just
all
gonna
these
do my
other
own
things, they're
thing.
just like, you know what, I'm going to do my own thing, but it's not quite consulting. And I can do this with multiple organizations at the same time if I
You know what
wanted
I think
to.
is, so you could be a fractional and you could be a fractional on your own and get your
Mm-hmm.
own clients. But I think there's a comfort sometimes in being a fractional for a company
Yes.
that hires out fractionals.
Yes.
Right. So going back to the temp agency analogy,
Yeah.
like there is like a structure of like, they're going to be presenting me. I'm part of these RFPs. Like this is how the work's going to get done. And they bill for you and they do. So what I appreciate about that is then that kind of structure is that you don't have to know how to do all the other stuff besides the stuff that you know how to do.
Right. And a lot of what I've seen from a fractional perspective is companies going out and saying, we want you for 8 months or 9 months or
Yeah.
whatever it is. Maybe you're covering mat leave, or maybe you're, whatever it is, but you are the CFO de facto, and you will be an employee of the company. You will receive the benefits that are available, but there's certain things that you may not necessarily get. You're probably
Yeah.
not going to get stock in the company or whatever it is.
Yeah,
It varies.
you may not get health benefits.
Correct. You may not get health
like
benefits.
you're going to come in as a 1099, which is you are an external, not you are a vendor.
Correct.
Right.
You could
And
be.
so, yeah.
And so to your point, it's become so popular that now there are actual organizations that are meant to
Staff fractionals.
basically that
Yeah.
say, hey, we're like fractional people. Like that's one example from in the HR space. It's literally an organization that will pool different fractional opportunities for people in the people space. And they provide professional development, for example.
Well, I was just going to tell you,
opportunities.
I have actually seen also a group of fractionals
Yes.
present as a group.
Yes, that's
So,
true too.
if you get like a CFO, a COO, a CSO, a CHRO, and you get together and then you pitch
Yeah.
together.
Think about the brain
and then,
trust
yeah,
in that, right?
And then it's like, okay, you need this one, this one, this one. Okay, you three are up for this one.
Yeah, exactly. And I I think it's worth repeating, like the brain trust in something like that is absolutely phenomenal. And, the space has evolved, right? Before it used to be you had to go out and try to find your own fractional opportunities. Now there just seem to be so much more common that I think you can say, for example, join an organization like that.
Well,
They
and
exist
that
for
part makes me
CFOs.
sad though. Are these replacing permanent jobs?
In
The
some
jobs that came
cases,
with 401k matching, that came
yeah,
with paid time off. You don't have PTO as a
right.
fractional, like as I think about the jobs that are open because of the fractional, I also mourn the loss of those jobs because they may never come back.
Yeah, and that's why, like I said, it almost feels like the gig economy
Right.
now to the more sort of professional kind of environment. And you're right. It's interesting because I've seen so many variations of what a fractional um, experience I think could be like.
Hmm.
The types of benefits that you get, for example, right, like PTO, or maybe in some cases you don't get PTO. In some cases I've seen that you're not allowed to wear any of the company logos,
Oh, wow. I haven't seen
for
that, but that makes
example,
sense.
or
Yeah.
in some cases you're required to wear the company, company gear. So it's very interesting, and I will say I think it's going to continue to evolve
Yeah.
because you're right. With a lot of what's happening with I think that's going to contribute or continue to contribute to this idea of, do we have enough capacity? Do we have enough here to be able to get a lot of the core kind of strategy
Hmm.
and maybe operational things? And we may only need someone on a part time basis to
Or
support.
this may be a great opportunity for entrepreneurs who don't have access to or could use someone as a chief operations officer to come in and like lend me your brain for a little bit, right? If it's a small business and you have like 1 to 4 employees, chances are the brain trust there is like already so like
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Um, but now you need fresh ideas or you need someone to come see it from the outside.
Yeah.
So I think that those are opportunities that are phenomenal
True.
for small businesses to take advantage of and to have access to that kind of talent that previously we didn't
Yeah.
because they were only available to big corporations, right? Like I'd be like, oh yeah, I could do that
Yeah.
if I had the Nike senior leadership team. So it's like you now have access to these individuals of great strategy or
Yeah.
like who have demonstrated expertise in their field so much so that we will hire them temporarily
Yeah.
because having part of their brain is better than not having any of their brain.
I agree. And as we're talking, I think about the conversations that we've had on this podcast before about the multi hyphenates.
Oh yeah.
And this is a great sort of way to
Yeah.
bring that back, because I think the last time that we chatted, this wasn't one of those kind of multi hyphenate things, but the more I'm seeing, it's also becoming a little bit of that, right?
Hmm.
Where you could be maybe deciding to be fractional while you're also writing your book, or
Yep.
you could be also starting your own business while you're while you're doing work on a fractional basis. And so I'd love to talk a little bit about like what happens if maybe someone is interested potentially in fractional work, or what happens if there's a situation, something changes at work, and now you're kind of in a situation where you're having to figure out what happens next.
So, first step, have a beautiful resume.
Yeah.
Because your resume is going up against all the other people that are in your same cohort that are also applying for that fractional position.
Yeah.
So your resume has to stand out. I always remember Legally Blonde,
Yeah.
where the guy, God, what was his name? I can't remember. But he asked her for her, he said, do you have a copy of your resume? And she gave it to him and he goes, it's pink. And they're like, it's scented.
Yeah.
Like, don't do that. But do have something like, do make your resume stand out
Yeah.
so that it talks about your expertise. Make sure it's, like general enough that they could present it right away, but also that it highlights what you do.
Yeah.
And, to that, you'll need a skill set inventory so that you can put it out there and you can talk about what you do well.
Yeah.
And then, I would say like stay on it, because there will be opportunities, but you have to submit that you are available for it.
Yeah.
And so, and also make sure that if you're not available that you unsubmit, because you never want it to be proposed and you
Yeah.
can't do it.
I agree. I think as you're talking about skill sets, for example, one thing that I would recommend to folks is to be able to talk about how you are a fast learner, for example. Like, you need to be able to demonstrate that you are somebody that can come into an organization, you can onboard relatively quickly, and you can go ahead and basically
You
hit the
know what
ground
I
running
do?
as
I
much
tell
as
people to
possible.
stop saying fast learner,
And what's a good alternative?
a fast contributor.
A fast contributor. I like
Yeah,
that.
because
Yeah.
it's like I'm not teaching anybody,
Right.
right? Especially in this job market where everyone's so qualified,
Yeah.
right? So just say I'm a quick contributor. I'm a fast
I
contributor. I
like
will
that.
jump in and make an impact.
Because it's almost implied that you are a fast learner
Right.
if you do that.
Yeah, you
Yeah, I
couldn't do
like
that if
that.
you couldn't.
I
But
like
yeah,
that. That's
there you go.
there you go. That's great. High five. The other thing I think to consider is the fact that as you're doing fractional work, you could probably build a lot of opportunities very quickly for your resume.
Yes.
And not all of them are going to be relevant. And so you're
Mhm.
going to have to figure out, especially if you bounce around different industries or you go to different size organizations, every single one of these things has value in a different way.
So there was this picture, and it was like in one of those posters that were all over offices that were meant to be funny, and it had like 12 forks, and one of them was like in a circle and like all scrunched up and like and and it said, just because you're unique doesn't mean you're valuable. And I love that
Oh.
image, because I was like, you're right. Like, that makes that fork
Yeah.
non-desirable.
Yeah.
Right? You wouldn't use it. It's not practical. It
Yeah.
doesn't meet a purpose or its function. So I always think about that. Like, sometimes, like, you don't have to be unique. Sometimes you have to be good at what you're doing and what the job requires.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But how to stand out, right? I
Right.
mean, like, it's funny because at home, I think over the years we've amassed like different collections of silverware, and for some reason, there's always this like one style of fork that I always gravitate towards, but they're all good forks.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, there's one that I just like, and I don't know if it's the handle or if it's the size.
God knows. That's how
but,
you know
like,
you're getting old. It was like, you're getting old when you have a favor burner.
That is funny. That's true. But yeah, really think, I think, strategically about these things, particularly as it pertains to your CV, your resume. The other thing I think to consider is the fact that an organization typically will give you terms up front, but most of the stuff can traditionally be negotiated. And so
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
And so no.
Yeah.
So if it's something like not being able to wear the company logos, that's probably
Yeah.
take it or leave it. I mean, I'm not going to fight necessarily with any company about
But my
whether or not I
hourly
can wear.
rate.
But your hourly rate,
Mhm.
the benefits potentially that you could have access to, some of this stuff is mandated by law or guided by law. So
Right.
like, if for example you are a part-time employee, like you can't work for more than 32 hours a week. If you
Right.
work a certain amount of times, then
So
you're now legally
maybe
considered something
check the
else.
law before you negotiate some of these, so it doesn't look like you're a newbie.
Yeah, especially in the
Yeah.
beginning, right?
Right. Mhm.
And a lot of these fractional roles that I've seen are remote, and so there are some other, I would say, jurisdictional things to consider
I
when
also
you're
always
talking
ask
about that.
I'm like, can I come meet the team at least once or twice during this 6 month?
That's great. I
Yeah,
love
because
that.
then I want to know who I'm working with, because then
Yeah.
I feel a stronger connection.
Right, but you just brought up a good point. I mean, there could be maybe a certain percentage of travel
Mhm.
that could be required. Maybe you can negotiate that a little bit, or so I would say just keep in mind that I think for consistency purposes, a lot of these organizations are putting out what I would call kind of general terms, but you can certainly inquire
Mhm.
and perhaps maybe even negotiate as part of this process.
Yeah. And also, some of the companies that put these out may say these are the details. These are the, God, I can't think of it. Salary requirements. These are
Sure.
this, and that's it. So also, before you apply, if it doesn't meet your what you're looking for, don't apply. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your time looking at your resume, because it's going to leave a bad taste in their mouth if they're like, why did she apply if she wanted more money, or
Yeah.
if this wasn't enough money. So I guess I would just say, this is a good opportunity for people who have the expertise. Make sure, like we said, to have a really strong resume, because you're going up against other really strong resumes. Make sure that you can do the job, want the job, and that you're meeting that salary requirement, that it's in where you want to be.
Yeah.
And, explore the different companies. I always think of V Chief, because that's the one, I know friends who have used it and have had much success with it, but there's so many companies that do this, that house the fractionals,
Yeah.
so that they can do the stuff that maybe you don't want to do.
Yeah. And I would say my last piece of advice is, as you're going through this, continue to assess whether or not this is actually something that you want to, like, if this is a path that feels viable to you, or that it's something that you wanted to continue to pursue. Maybe along the way, you realize that going back in house full time is probably better. Maybe you realize that this is something that you can continue to do and make this successful. Those are two very different equations.
Yes.
Those are two completely different, I would say, preparation needs. There are a lot of, I would say, not just financial considerations, but family considerations that you might need to take, that you might need to just factor into the equation. But as you're exploring, maybe you're realizing that you're liking a particular industry versus another, or maybe you're realizing that there's a specific size of company that fits
feels more like
better
home.
for you.
Right.
Maybe
Yeah.
you tried it at a startup and you absolutely hated it, or maybe maybe you did a startup and you absolutely loved it. Like, these are things to really continue to keep in mind as you're going through this process, and then continue to assess as you're going through, because for some people this might be a stopgap. For some people this might be something that they're temporarily engaging, but for others it may
Yeah,
be
maybe their
absolutely
career.
something that
Yeah.
they decide to do moving
100%.
forward. What I haven't seen yet is people be necessarily cornered into a specific kind of outcome, right? So, which I think is good news. I think that people who have stepped out and done fractional work, whether they wanted to or needed to, have been able to successfully find roles back again into their organizations, and maybe even in some of the
Even within
companies that
some of
they're
their
actually,
clients.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so just keep that in mind. There is a lot more, I think, fluidity when it comes to this type of work.
Yes. Awesome. Well, that is our conversation on fractional. I'm
Yeah.
out. Carlos hasn't even touched his coffee.
I have a little bit. But it's a great topic.
It is.
And I'm excited. I mean, if any of you have engaged in fractional work and have advice for other folks too,
shoot
please,
us
by
a
all
note.
means. Like, we don't profess to be the experts in this, and again, it just seems to be a continuously evolving field. And so that is the power of community, right?
Right.
You know people that have done it. I know people that have done it. I work with an organization on a contract basis that does fractional HR work.
100%.
Right?
Like, that's the beauty about consulting or being a fractional, is like going in, solving a problem, and being able to do it on your terms too. So
yeah, love
all
that.
right. Well, I'm gonna
Awesome.
refresh this. We'll see you next week on
See
Corporate
you soon.
Cafecito.
Bye bye.